friends, welcome to my channel Sushant Chess Wise. Today we are again going to look at some king and pawn endgames. Today we are going to do some test positions based on whatever we have learned so far. So we have looked at the key squares, we have looked at the concept of opposition, we have looked at the case of rook pawn. Okay, so let's do some test positions. Let's start with the first one. So this is the position white to play. So we have to see and decide first by calculation, or if we know the theory that way, whether white will win the game. Okay, let's try to calculate. So you can set this position on your board and try to solve it. Then I will tell you can compare with your answers. So I hope you understood that this position is easily winning for white. At first it looks a bit complicated. See, white can win in all the ways. He cannot play king f6 because of stalemate, and he cannot play king h6 because of stalemate. The other two moves which win for white, they are king f5 and king h5. Both will win for white. Let's see. White plays kh5. Now black is compelled to play the king to g7. I have told you before also, most of the time 2 pawns up position is winning. Now white has to use a simple tactic. He gives up the pawn, h8 queen, promotes the pawn to queen, king has to take, and see, he takes the opposition. This we did before, position number 1. Now it is black to play. So black has to give up the opposition. King goes to g8, pawn moves to g7, forcing the king to f7, and the white king moves to h7. Next move the pawn will queen and white will win the game. Let's go back and check quickly. Same thing would happen to king f5 also. kg7, h8, king h8, f6, king f6, kg8, g7, kh7 and kf7. Same thing happens in both kf5 and kh5. But white has to give up the pawn, then only he can win the game. Let's see the next one. The next position here, this is white to play, and we will try to calculate and find out what happens with white to play. I hope you have understood that this is the case of rook's pawn. So all white has to do is ensure that either his king enters these 4 squares, any of these 4 squares, or he makes sure that the black king cannot reach the b2 or b1 squares. So b2 and b1 are the key squares. So white to play, see, white has to rush to the c1 square. So king e3, okay, kb4, king d2, kb3, and now after kc1 we see that the black king is not getting to the b2 square, means the position is drawn. Let's try 2 things now. If black plays a5, then just kb1, and now king is inside the square. So whatever black does, let's say a4, ka1, a3, kb1, a2 check, king a1, and it says stalemate. Okay, after ka3, or if the king moves, king takes the pawn. And in this position, suppose instead of a5, black plays king a2, then kc2, a5, king c1, a4, kc2, a3. Now just white has to ensure that he doesn't allow kb1. So just king c1, and now after ka1, kc2, a2 and kc1 is stalemate. Okay. So with white to play, it was very easy. This was for our exercise purpose. I had just kept the position white to play, but I will just tell you black to play, black will win the game. Black king will just reach b4, b3, b2, and he will start pushing the a pawn. Let's go to next one. Let's look at the next position here. Black is 2 pawns up, okay? And the position is of course white to play. If black to play, black just plays kg1 and promotes the pawn to queen. Okay, so white to play, white has got now 2 ways to carry on. One, he can take the pawn, okay? So, but the problem is if he plays kf3 now, then after kg1, I hope you have understood, the black king reaches one of the key squares, and the black pawn will just win kg3, h2, and the pawn promotes to queen. Okay, so here the position looks losing, but although he is 2 pawns up, he is not able to do much, because one of the pawn is rook pawn, and white is also getting opposition, and also he is controlling the key squares. So now after kf2, black has no move other than kh1, and after kh1, Here one has to be very careful, because if white takes kf3, then again after kg1 the position is losing for white. So second move which white has to play properly is the move king f1. He has to take this opposition. After kg3, black has this very simple move kg1. Now white king can take only one of the pawn and the other one will queen. Okay. So after king f1, good move. Now black if plays kh2, then white again plays kf2. The position will keep on repeating. And after the move f2, king just takes f2, pawn comes to h2 and king f1. Again black is in a stalemate. So in this position, anything else he can do is just h2. After h2 also same, king f2, and black has no moves. See, another strange kind of stalemate situation with two pawns, okay, for black. So I hope you understood this position. It was an easy one, but this was, we can say, slightly tricky position. Let's look at some more positions. Let's look at the next position here. It is white to play, and let's see whether white is able to win with his two extra pawns. Okay, so position is a bit tricky. Okay, so I hope you have spent some time. Now let's see what happens here. First thing, we note that if the d7 pawn is given up, then the game will be easily drawn. Let's say something like king e5, kd7, and trying to take opposition. Okay, but after the move kc7, kc5, black has the good move kb7, to which white cannot take opposition because of his own pawn, and we see the pawn and king have come together, and next move the pawn will have to advance, so the position will become drawn. Okay, so white has to use some kind of trick here, some idea here, because easily he cannot win. If he plays the pawn to b6, then king will not take the b6 pawn, of course, because pawn queens. King will take d7, and see, after b7 he goes to king c7 and takes the pawn, so the position will be again easily drawn. Okay, so the first move is more or less forced. White has to play ke6, he has to guard the pawn. Now white is threatening ke7, and next move we will queen the pawn. Black sets a trap now. Of course it's an only move kd8, but now white has some problems. So firstly, what we see, if white plays b6, see, this is a strange kind of stalemate position. King has no place because of the pawns. See, this pawn controls c7, d7 pawn controls c8 and d8, and d7 is guarded by the king. So white cannot play b6 here. White cannot play kd6 also, because it will be a stalemate immediately. So white uses the tactic which he was trying on the previous variation. So white plays kd5. Okay. Now forcing black to take the pawn. We'll look at other variations also. King d7, and after the move b6, we see a strange situation where the pawn is ahead of the king, but now black is unable to keep the opposition or unable to stop white from taking opposition. So king goes to, suppose, c8, then kc6, king b8, b7, king a7, then kc7, and the pawn promotes. Black can set one last trap. He can play kd8, and now if white plays kc6, then after kc8 it will be position number 1 with white to play, and the game will be drawn. So white has to play the right move after kd8, kd6 taking opposition, king goes to c8, kc6, kb8, b7, king a7, kc7, and the white pawn promotes. Okay, let's look at one more line. The last one here. Suppose black plays king c7 here, then white has two ways. One, he can play immediately d8, king into d8, okay, and then he can choose any of either kd6, kc8, kc6, kb8, kb6, reaching position number 2, which is always winning, whoever has the move, or he can simply do kc6 here, kc8, and then push the pawn and gain back the opposition. So he will snatch the opposition, forcing the black king to move kb8, d7, ka7, kc7, and the white pawn queens. So in both cases here, And even if black plays case e7, then just case e6, and then he can push the b pawn, k d8, then b6. King has to come to c7, and the b pawn queens. So this position was very tricky because white has to sacrifice the pawn here, and then only he is able to reach a winning position. Let's look at one more case. Let's look at the last position here. Again, white has got two extra pawns. It is black to play, of course. White to play, white will win with the move g7. Okay, so it's somewhat tricky. Let's see. Black has to play the move ke6 so that he approaches the pawn. Now we see white cannot win here by taking opposition. After ke4, kf6, kf4, kg6, we reach a position where king and pawn are together, and it's not possible to make any progress. After g5, black will just play kg7 and he will keep on taking opposition, so the game will be drawn. So after the move ke6, white has to stop move kf6. Okay, if he plays g7, then also same, king f7, ke5, k into g7, and the white king is not able to get into opposition. So let's have a look at that position. g7, kf7, ke5, kg7. Now the king was required here in order to win. So after kf5, black uses kf7 and he gets the opposition. So again the pawn has to advance, and that position is again drawn. So after ke6, it's important that white plays g5. Okay, I hope you understood that white will be able to convert this game. White will take the opposition. Let's see how. King e7 forced. If the king moves away, the pawn queens. So king e5, king f8. Okay, he has to go that side. King takes the opposition. King g8 forced. g7, and now there is king h7. And now there are some complications. Firstly, if white plays king f7, then it's a stalemate. The black king will have no place. And if white plays g6 check, then also after kg8, now there is no option. The king will have to move, and after kg7 the game is drawn. But here white has a simple technique. He sacrifices the upper pawn, okay, and he takes the opposition. And this position is very easily winning for white. This is position number 2 with black to play here, but whoever has the move, white wins. So after kh8, we can just go kf7, kh7, g6, kh6 and g7. To kh8 also white would have played g7 and the pawn would have queen. So this position, I would say, was one of the tricky positions and white was able to win because he knew the technique that one pawn has to be sacrificed to get the opposition. Okay, I hope you are enjoying these lessons. Do like, share and subscribe the channel. Thanks for your time.